Okay. Okay. So should we resume? Okay. So I want to do just one more example demonstrating the higher and the lower domain business. And then my plan is to just go ahead and set out certain assumptions. So I'm going to set out a certain working model for that will work hopefully for at least a representative set of examples in Hindi. Okay, and the goal is not to be satisfied with this model. This model is going to be a very simple model which will which will leak in many ways and which will also be theoretically maybe too rich than we want it to be ultimately, but it will give us a system that you can play with, and already starting from tomorrow we will try to look at things that it cannot do. But today I will try to put the best spin on it and give you this model which works. Okay, so let's start with, I want to give you one example with causatives, which just shows that with causative morphology, you can affect things in the lower domain that you cannot with tense aspect morphology. So let's start with a simple a transitive like open the door. So something like Ram ne darwaza. So Ram ne darwaza khola. Open perfective. Okay. So now in this case, if you look at the number of arguments that you have, and in particular, so you have this guy and this guy. So you have the guy who opens the door, the thing that gets opened. Let's now look at what happens if I throw in an instrument. So now what kind of instruments can I get here? I can get an instrument like चाबी से key with, okay, Ram ने चाबी से दरवाजा खोला. Ram opened the door with the key. Now let me put something else here instead of चाबी से. चोर से, thief. This is weird. Unless like I have like a thief who is in the shape of a key, or imagine I caught the thief and like I'm a very violent person and I use the poor thief to bang the door and open the door, something like that. But short of that, you cannot use that. Okay. However, yes, absolutely. So now if you do khulwaya, now chor se, thief with, this becomes okay. Ram ne chor se darwaza khulwaya. Okay. So what
was mentioned was not chor se, jor se.
Jor se, okay, I see. So that's okay. So jor se, however, is strength with force, actually, with maybe force. This is good. Ram ne jor se darwaza khola. That's fine. But the contrasted thing for me is the chor se, not the jor se. Okay. So Ram ne chor se darwaza khola is just a very weird sentence, because the structure there does not license this kind of an instrumental meaning. That is something you get when you bring in the causative. Okay. So this is again an example that, so the va morpheme, that you get there is a very interesting morpheme, but what the work that it's doing is in this part. Okay. It's not doing it in this part, and as a result, it can change the shape of the event. So the khulwa event involves an intermediate actor, and that is what the chore is, while the khol event does not involve that. So if you want to change what's happening in the event, you have to change things in the lower part of the tree. The higher part of the tree is not going to do that for you. Okay. There are interesting questions here about the realization of the of this morphology. In Hindi, you can only get one va morphology, one piece of morphology like this. In Kashmiri, you can get two. So Kashmiri has this costume morpheme inav, and you can get one inav and then you can put another inav. I don't think you can get three, but you can get two. I've heard that Gujarati has complex causatives of this sort where you have vav or something like this morphology, which seems to have at least two pieces. So there is interesting work to be done there. My point here was merely to show you that this is another instance of domains. Okay, and even within these domains, we have to think about the ordering of things. So now how many things have we looked at? We have looked at the causative morphology. We've looked at passive morphology, and then we've looked at these guys. Okay, so these guys are all higher, right? But at least in Hindi, it looks like the ordering seems to be causative, so root, causative, passive, and then other stuff. Okay, so passive is not in the higher domain, but it's higher than the causative. Okay, so you can sort of see this if you try to passivize khulvaya, which is open causative, you will get khulvaya gaya, where what you are seeing is that the passive morphology is external to the causative morphology. If you try to reverse, I would not even know how to create that object, because the passive, as we saw earlier, is periphrastic. It's two pieces, and then it would get very complicated. Okay, so what now I just want to set up some basic assumptions about structure, about case marking, some of which we have already seen, but so I'll start with simplex. Let's start with
Sorry, could you
yeah.
what you said about passivizing the causative?
Okay, let me actually do the example which I said it's completely impossible, to show you what such a thing might possibly look like. Okay, so we start with khulvaya or khulva, which is the causative. Okay, so khulva. This is open. If you're wondering why this is not khol, hold on to that thought, because there are interesting things to say, but I'm not going to tell you just right now. So this is the causative, okay, khulva. And there are many causatives in Hindi. This is the indirect causative, okay, so khulva. Now, if you want to do the passive of this, you do you put the passive morpheme, ya, the perfective passive, and then you put the go verb. Let's say in this case we are khulvaya gaya, so this is go perfective, and this is the passive. And note, of course, that this and this have the same shape, as I mentioned. This is the causative, and this is open. Okay, so what you see is that passive is on the outside of the causative. It's open cause passive. Okay, but now let's see what the other, let's just brute force try to do it, right? So it might look, this is going to be awful, but it's going to look like this. So first we do the passive, and now it's also going to fail at this point. So this is well, if I could put, we put stars, but here there should be like 5 stars, because this is not bad at the level of ungrammaticality. This is bad at the level of does not exist, right? So note what I've done here. So let me gloss. So this is open. I tried. This is this piece here, right? This is the passive. Okay. So this is my attempt to do a passive. And then this is the causative. Okay. So there are multiple problems here. I think the first problem is the syntactic problem, that you're putting the passive morphology in a place where it does not belong. It's in the wrong position. But there's a morphological problem, I think, which is that Gaya is based on the verb go, right? And Gaya is a suppletive, right? So it's when it's not combining with ya, it takes the form ja, jaega, right? Jata. So the problem is ja does not have a causative, or it at least does not have a recognizable. Java is not a word of in my so Java. So this is just not. This does not exist. Okay, and so again, when you're looking at questions of voice and causativization and passives and so on, think about this. Okay, think about where. So, for example, like those of you who have this morphological passive, right? Think about, like, suppose you have a morphological passive and you also have a causative. Does the morphological passive morpheme come closer to the root, or does the causative morpheme come closer to the root, right? So think about all of these issues. These are all, I think these are important from the angle of the architecture. One other thing which is kind of fun to play with here is, actually with these guys, I think it's all straightforward, but it's worth thinking about how do these guys interact with the passive? Okay, do you, for example, a good example, we could, since we are looking at it right now, let's try raha, right? So khulwa raha. So this is progressive and be present. Okay, so what was our sentence? Ram chor se darwaza khulwa raha hai. Ram is having the door opened by the thief. Okay, so now if you want to do the passive here, we find that the passive has to go here. This is good. So this will give us khul va ya ja, and note that you now get ja raha hai. Kamra chor se khulwaya ja raha hai. So open, cause, perfective. Oh no, not. Well, the point is it's the same morpheme, but here it's doing the passive. Go, progressive. So this thing has two pieces. This is the passive. So it's cause, passive, progressive. Okay. This is good. Now if you were to try and put it here, this is not going to work out. And let's see, what would it look like? Kulwa khul. I actually don't know. I'll write it down, but you'll see again. This is just going to give us like cannot say this, does not exist in the language. Okay, so khulwa will be as is. Raha gaya. I don't even know what to do. Gaya. Okay, but this thing collapses here. Khulwa rahaya gaya hai. Okay, this is just impossible. So actually there is one other thing which is worth looking at.